Driss, thank you very much for joining me today. And for our audience, this is Driss Temsamani. Driss is the head of digital for Citibank and a good friend. We both sit on the Junior Achievement Americas board. And I'm even going to ask him what Temsamani means, because I feel like there's a meaning even behind the last name. And when you are in our business of translation, there's always that natural curiosity. Driss, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Gary. Well, this is a treat to be with you on this podcast. Looking forward to it.
And Driss, now that I've opened the can of worms, does Temsamani mean anything?
It does. It does. So it's a name that refers to a region of Morocco. So northern Morocco is what's called the Reef Mountains, and within the Reef Mountains you have a city or a village called Temsamani. And that's where
Okay.
my ancestors are from. And so my last name is Rifi Temsamani. If Temsamani was not good enough to point to a place, my last name also has Rifi, which is the Reef Mountains of Morocco.
It defines the geography really, really well.
It's a geolocation. You cannot get lost.
When it is, I find with a lot of names throughout the world that often they have meaning versus sort of a lot of the Western world where typically it was either based or either Christian based or just names that people came up with, but not necessarily where the word doesn't necessarily mean something. And that's always a piece of curiosity that I find particularly fascinating.
Right? Curiosity is a trait that every business person should have, and you're a very good business person. So
When Driss, I appreciate that, and I will ask you about some advice that you have for business people down the road. I want to start a little bit about, and now we know where the family originates from. So tell us a bit about your upbringing and sort of your career path, especially early on.
well, I think the best way to describe it is my career path is actually an accident. I never thought I would be here doing what I do, or even talking to you. I think if I had followed the traditional path, I would be working in the military today. Probably a general, knowing my stuff. And the reason why is I come from a long history of military leaders within the Moroccan, I would say, political scene. My grandfather led a Moroccan, led in many ways led the Moroccan independence. He was working between the Spanish government and the Moroccan government to establish the northern region of Morocco, which eventually led to the independence. And so his father was very close to the Moroccan palace. He was the general secretary of the prior king, and we can go all the way back to the Rifi dynasty that led the independence from England, and including the Portuguese that actually came into northern Morocco. So again, if I had followed the path, I would not be working in financial services and board of junior achievements working with you. I would not be here. And so it is an accident that I end up in the United States and built a life here.
And so take us a bit through that, Driss, because I mean you are a fascinating immigrant story, as many successful immigrants have come in, and it's they try to figure out a path in a new country. So take us through what those early days were like.
Well, yeah. And during the time, there were terrifying days, as in any immigrant story. When you arrive to this country, you don't speak the language, you don't have the money, you don't have any support system, and you're literally facing a situation of I would go as far as saying homelessness, and going through hunger. You're building from scratch. You're starting from zero. In my story, as I told you, it was an accident. I knew I wasn't going to come back when I asked my family to send me to the United States for summer vacation, something that would have taken 30 to 60 days, and I was going to be back to military school. So when I sent my ticket back home with a letter, and yes, this was 1986, we didn't have phones. So we used to send letters in the post mail, and they took minimum a month to get there. And told them in that letter that I wasn't coming back, and they sent my return ticket. I knew I was signing up for. I mean, that was it. I mean, I had taken the challenge. I wasn't going back. I had no money to buy another ticket to go back. But yeah, so those days were they really make who you are. I think that hardship is a foundation. It's the platform that makes someone achieve the American dream. A lot talk about the American dream. The American dream is one is you have to go through a struggle. You have to start from scratch, from the bottom, and second, you have to show to others that you are on the right path. That you're ethical. You work hard. That if they trust you, you will not fail them. And when you do that, they pay it forward. They help you. They open doors for you. It's that those links of the chain that end up making this the foundation of what this country is all about. And it's the people. It's the people that actually help those immigrants that have a dream that goes through struggle, and they help them achieve something. And then you find yourself achieving. You find yourself achieving success. But when you look back, it's those people that help you along the way. But you also have to do your part. You have to work hard. You have to be honest. You have to deliver on the trust that they put on you. And yeah, you don't do wrong things because they take you out very quickly. You know, you actually don't get to that dream if you start the wrong way.
No, and I mean, it's the importance of hard work and integrity, right? And it's both critical components to those early steps. And Driss, I mean, you've had an illustrious career, but certainly from those early days where it was heavy sacrifice, how do you end up in your current role?
Oh, there's so many accidents, so many beautiful accidents happened through my life since I arrived to the United States. Look, I didn't do well at school when I was growing up. I had an artistic side to me that was not well understood in the society where I grew up. And as I said, we come from a very rigid military background, family, ancestors all went through the same process of becoming leaders through that space that I call military complex and government, so forth, so on. And I had a lot of artistic tendencies. I would say I had a creative side that was not understood in the society where I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s. And so when I came to the U.S., through an accident again in a family that took me in, and I lived in their home for they had an Atari computer. And I've never seen computers in my life, and these are the early computers. And while I didn't do well in science topics, math, physics, when I was growing up, it didn't make sense to me, at least in the way they were teaching us.
Right.
Computers made a lot of sense to me. The first time I touched the keyboard and I interacted with that Atari computer, it all made sense to me. I mean, I started programming in low level language before I even took advanced math and in college. And to me, that was that accident that literally lit up not only my creativity in computing at that time, and we're talking about Fortran and COBOL and assembly and low-level language and programming on boards. I mean, these were the early days. No internet at this time. We're talking 1987, 1988. And it all started there. I fell in love with computers. And so that led me to, again, falling in love with electronics in general, just understanding electronics, not the software side, the hardware side of computing. So I started there and I went to a technical school. That was the beginning. I went to at nights while I was working at a flea market during the day. And when I finished around 9 p.m., I would run to this technical college and I would start at 10 p.m. and not leave until midnight, and learned electronics. And of course, from there, went on to understand computer science. And to me, it was art. Honestly, it was never about science. There was an art about computers and software and hardware and how you translate concepts, business concepts, to something that someone can interact with. And look at where we are today, because I have never let go of that. I mean, I've gone from that to industrial marketing, to strategy, to product development and sales, but I never let go of the technology and how that technology evolved from that time to where we are, and the role it still plays in our day-to-day life, as well as how we conduct business.
No, and it's, I think that is an important part of the evolution, Driss, because you hear people say, hey, how do you actually end up sort of through those steps, and it's through that career path. And I think those early days are so critical. And you hear stories about Steve Jobs taking, a calligraphy class in university, and how that sort of what that told him about user experience and visual appeal, and how that dictated later on in life. So you can see the similar path with you and some of those aspects. And you're right, computer science is far more artistic in many ways than it's compared to traditional natural sciences.
You and I talked the other day. I know we were chatting, and I said, I admire so much the entrepreneurship field and entrepreneurs. I admire them. I think they're not only risk takers, but they are the ones that have they participated in this economic development and growth in general, right? It all starts with a person, and then it becomes a company, and then it goes from local to global, and then it impacts everything we do. And I started the company. So as I was telling you, so in 1989, I started a company called Multimedia Labs, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I'm telling you because I just came across some of the materials I had created at that time to incorporate my company, and I made $500. I made a sale, and it was a company that was going to specialize. Of course, it was just me, and it specialized in interactive kiosks, where I built software in a standalone kiosk that had a modem that connected to a bulletin board, and it allowed the company to digitize their catalogs and have it kind of like a point of sales, but not truly sales. It was more information based, but interactive, and it had sound. I was using a soundboard, and it's funny enough at that time NVIDIA was around, so we used to use NVIDIA graphic cards. But of course, life took a turn, and I got a corporate job, and I liked it. And yeah, I gave up my dream to be an entrepreneur, and I started working for an international company. But yeah, these are all moments that one can look back at, and they're learning. You learn so much from those moments, and some take them farther, some they just stay as a dream. So I still have a dream one day to do something in the entrepreneurial space.
Well, and Driss, in your current role, you certainly have a lot of latitude to be entrepreneurial within sort of that enterprise ecosystem. So I think you have had a way to sort of satisfy that curiosity in an environment that is far more corporate, but that in a way it also gives you access to sort of a playground that is far bigger than sometimes entrepreneurs may have, especially in the early days.
It's true. It's very true. Look, I am privileged. It's an honor and a privilege to do what I do and work with teams around the world and be able to interact with the clients that we have, and the clients that trust us, as well as the regulators and central banks who give us licenses to operate in the countries where we operate. And my experience, to your point, has been how do we collaborate between the private and the public sector to shape finance, and when you think about the technologies that have evolved from that time, talking from the 1994 when I joined Citi to now, all those technologies, which we're living another inflection point now with AI, and you're in the middle of that. How does that shape finance? How does it shape businesses? How do we continue growing the economy, driving more on the social side by bringing more people to the financial services? It's just fascinating, and I have the privilege and the chance to do that every single day with clients and with the policymakers. And it's yes, it's definitely impactful, and we learn every day. So I can just imagine what the next 5 years have for us, waiting for us.
And Driss, the what does your day to day look like now, sort of in your current role? I know obviously there's a lot of things covered under your portfolio, but just for the audience that isn't familiar with your role.
Well, I like to call myself a coach. I ask my team to call me coach. Big part of what I do is be there for my team members. I work for them; they don't work for me, and so I dedicate a lot of time to connect with them every day, just to make sure they're okay. If they need my help, and I operate across the Americas, so I have teams in Canada, the US, across Latin America. So if they call just each one of them and spend 5 to 15 minutes, that takes a big portion of my time, and I try to do that, if not daily, at least a couple of times a week. So that's a big portion of it. And the second one is clients, and a client on one side, and it's regulators and central banks on the other side, to make sure that not only we're delivering for our clients and we're helping them make progress and grow, but also we're working locally with policymakers, regulators, central banks to modernize the financial market infrastructure. So between all of those, it keeps me pretty busy. And of course, the travel. The travel is a big part of it, to be on the ground where the action is, and to make sure that we connect between our local organization, local teams, and the global organization, and we're all going in one. It's a one way, right? So we're not taking different approaches. We're not taking different roads to get to where we need to go. We're all working as one.
Driss, I'm going back a step here. Growing up and perhaps throughout your career, who do you think had the biggest influence? And it doesn't have to be one person, but this is something I like to ask our guests on the podcast, because it's so interesting to see sometimes the effect that people have had on the background of our guests.
Well, look, I grew up in a home where there were stories all the time. If it wasn't about my dad, it was his father. My grandfather was his father, and we go. I mean, ancestor stories filled up every moment of the day. Of course, I grew up and we didn't have a TV at home. So, I mean, we had a radio. We had a radio in the living room. So, and there were shows that you listened to on the radio, and that was not throughout the day. It was on the weekends. But yeah, stories about what, from ancestors all the way to my dad, what they have done, and historical moments. I mean, if it wasn't times that was too far from my age, they would talk about World War One and World War II, and how Morocco was positioned in the middle of all of that, and how we maintained balance in the region. So a lot of that, and of course, you can't help but being influenced by all this. And then. And so I think that shift, if anything, it shifted my leadership and character when it comes to how I deal with crisis and people, and in general, legacy. How do you leave a legacy? And of course, I cannot leave out my mother, who I think gave me the artistic side. I think if there is anything creative about me, it comes from her. I mean, my mom spoke multiple languages, and she liked music and arts and painting, and so I feel like she gave me that. so I had to combine those two, and here I am, right? I mean, in another country, very far from home, where I have built a life, and so it's good to keep one foot there, one foot here, because it keeps you balanced.
And Driss, you lead digital transformation for one of the largest financial institutions in the world. What business advice do you have for business leaders out there? And I'll ask for this in two fronts. One, around digital transformation and sort of how they should approach this. And two, more generally, because certainly you've had a lot of interesting experiences. And I mean, some of this you've already alluded to, spending time with your team, coaching them, etc. So one on the digital side and one more generally.
So I think I would love to talk about what Picasso said when he's famously quoted saying that we all have an artist within, because we are born as children. We have these artistic tendencies, and we are artists when we're children. But we can't keep it as we get older. Right? We have a hard time maintaining that artist within, inside us, as we get older. And to me, it's not about art. To me, it was what I told you when we started this discussion or this chat. I told you, that curiosity is what makes you an entrepreneur. I think being curious is a big part of it. Artists are curious about everything around them, and they express it in their artistic tendencies, from music to painting to poetry, so forth, so on. And we don't have to be rigid when we run businesses. I think one, curiosity makes you want to learn continuously, nonstop. And when you were a child, you asked why about everything. So you were curious and you wanted to know how the world works around you. So you asked your parents. You were curious. Now I find it interesting how, as we get older, saying I don't know, or why is this or why is that, is a sign of you not being senior, or you just don't know. Like, how can you be in the role you are and still ask those questions? You should know. It's funny. Like, you can create an acronym in a meeting and just say it, and no one will say, "What does that mean?" And you can just make it up as a joke. And I test my team something like that. I'll just make something up and see who's going to ask me, "What does that mean?" And no one is going to say, "I just made that up." How comes no one asked me? So I think curiosity is a big part of it. I think that also goes hand in hand with what I said before about being a coach. To be a business leader is also you're a coach of your team. I mean, you're guiding them towards something, and they're not going to go there because you have a vision. They're not going to go there if it doesn't become their own vision. So you gotta bring them with you. And so how do you transmit that? And so you just and you cannot do it as a transaction and force them, or just basically create metrics for it. And it has to be done at a human level. I mean, you have to understand, what does it mean for them, and why should they even come along with you? Is it just for the paycheck, or right, for some reviews that you're gonna do in the mid-year or end of the year, or is it they're gonna be owner operators with you, because you're owner operator of your own company? Now you want each one of them to be that as well. If you can do that, then you really have something that's going to become successful. And I believe great companies were built like that. They were built. They were small. It was more of like a family. Everybody was together. Everybody wanted to win. Everybody wanted to succeed. And as they got bigger, they maintained that culture in that company, and they become very successful.
And Driss, what are some of the, if you were to say, you've had to get buy-in from your teams in, since the 90s, there would have been a series of digital transformations that have been fundamental, including the current one in the world of LLMs and the transformers that we're dealing with to this day. How have you managed to get the team's buy-in, and what are some of the strategies you've used?
Well, I know it's cliche to say that for the last 200,000 years, of Homo sapiens, right? Our progress has been around creating tools. So, I mean, we have developed as a society by creating tools that augmented our capability to prosper. And so, from the time we organized around land and we started farming, to the time we created the wheel, to the time we invented electricity, and on and on. These were tools that we've created to augment our capacity as human beings. And we are all born with 80 billion neurons in our brain. And how we shape those neurons becomes intelligence. And that intelligence is what drives progress, right? I mean, so it's not like one of us has more neurons than another. And so we need to harness intelligence, and intelligence is learned through experiences. And so AI, as soon as you interact with AI, and it's been around for more than 70 years, as you know, I mean, it's more of the transformer technologies, the large language models. It's our Netscape moments, 2022, our Netscape moment, like 1994. we finally got to look inside AI and understood that this intelligence as a service now exists and we can tap into it. And so when you do that, when you tap into it, you realize you have a couple of additional IQ points that now you can harness and you can augment yourself. Like you can go from point A to point B faster. All right. And so point A and point B did not change. It's just with tools, we're now going faster from A to B. And this is just another technology, another inflection point in the industrial revolutions that is allowing us to keep augmenting the human capacity to progress and prosper. And so to answer you, I think the best is to use it and to harness that intelligence. Of course, we are the ones using that technology. We're harnessing this additional intelligence, IQ points, additional IQ points. And there are limitations, and these limitations are becoming less and less as the technology gets more sophisticated. As when 2022, we spoke about hallucination, and the GPT models. When less and less, they're hallucinating less and less. They're reflecting more and more with AI agents, and we're now having reflections, the same as humans do. They don't answer. The GPT model just doesn't give you the answer in a second or a fraction of a second. It thinks, and that's code. And so we're refining these models, and the more we use AI, the more we realize what it's all about, and then it's augmentation. And so in my team and with my clients, as I travel around and I give talks about it, this is what I say. Right? So it's not replacing us as humans. It's augmenting our capacity to execute, and we're just going to go from A to B faster.
No, and I think that is very true. And I think would you say that for business leaders, part of the advice is not to shy away from this and to experiment early on and learn about this early on?
Well, I mean, to have been there in 1999, 2000, 2004, and debate, should we have a presence online or not? And what should we put in the website? And then debate if e-commerce was, something that was going to actually grow to become now more than half of commerce online in mobile phones. So we tend to have these questions, and the point is, do we want to wait until hour zero when everyone caught up, or do we want to actually look at the markers and at the writings on the wall to know that this is exactly where we're gonna go? I mean, 99% of all the technologies that we use today, 99% of them. And as I said, we've been around for 200,000 years.
Right.
But 99% of all the technology we use have been invented in the last 200 years or less. And we talk about exponential growth. If you look at those last 200 years, of the 200,000 years of human history, the last 5 years was faster than the last 20 years. And the next 5 years will be faster. It will be the equivalent of 50 years plus. And so to wait is really a decision that will lead to destruction in many ways. I mean, to harness the technology in a way that makes sense, not to throw it at every problem we have. Yes, I think that should be looked at carefully. I mean, we have limited resources and time, so we shouldn't throw AI every problem we have. But we got to harness it in a way that is effective. In the stage that it's in right now, we're dealing with with the first version of what it's going to be, and we will go through a lot of releases in the next couple of years, as we have since 2002. So absolutely harness the technology effectively and don't wait.
And Driss, I think I want to highlight something you mentioned because it's so important. The next 5 years will have change that is akin to the last 50 years combined, just because of the exponential evolution in it. I think that's a critical point, that for business leaders to ignore the months now, it will be, think of 12 months in a year and you had 5 years to 50 years. It's almost like every month is almost a year in the time preceding this time.
Yeah, I mean, we're living examples of that. I said I came to the U.S. in 1986. I used to send letters to my family. It took more than 30 days to get there, and I would wait another 30 days plus to receive an answer. I remember it used to cost about $20 a minute in a public phone, and so you didn't have a lot of money to call my family. That's for sure. But you fast forward, not a lot of years, you now call them with, a video. I mean, you basically have a video call. I mean, several times a day. I mean, you have family members that don't realize you're traveling or busy. They are calling you every 5 minutes to chat with you over video. So it just to think that at that time in 1986, that's science fiction. Those are sci-fi movies. And so and of course, that was several years ago. I mean, we're talking, mid 2000s and 2012. So think where we are and think where we're going to be in 5 years. And so this is not disruption. This is economic growth and productivity. And so every single technology in the last 20 years, if you look at it and you look at GDP, you look at how many people we need to make $1 million in Fortune 500, it's all about economic growth and productivity. And that economic growth, by the way, while some industries get disrupted, new economic flows are born. And we have people working in industries today or on their own, making money with technologies that didn't exist. And those flows did not exist several years ago. And we're only going to see a lot more of that moving forward. So for sure, harnessing this technology for, again, economic growth and productivity is the right thing to do.
So business leaders embrace this, move on it at your earliest. I don't even want to use the term convenience, but as early as you can.
Urgency.
with urgency, because things are moving fast. And Driss, I appreciate that advice from a digital perspective. Anything that more broadly, sort of general business advice you'd have for business leaders out there from your years in industry and also as an immigrant to the U.S. that had to carve a path in a way that may not be as common?
Look, if there's one thing that does not change, not where I was born, not here, not in the time I arrived in late 80s. There's one thing that doesn't change, I think, is the human connection, is building those relationships. And of course, when we talk about all these technologies, there is a negative, I would say, impact on these physical human connections that are needed to do business. And so we are, as the communication speed up, and we went from talking to sending letters and faxes and then beepers, to email, to instant messages, to now talking with emojis. And it's, you don't call anymore and you don't meet anyone, and you just send them, you forward what people forward to you. Happy holidays, and you just get forwarded 1,000 times. You don't even have time to write anymore. So I think we got to pay attention to that. And it's not just at our personal level, in business as well. Personally, I sometimes don't answer emails because I want people to call me. Because I want to seize that opportunity to ask them how they're doing and how's the family, and invest a little bit in them to create that connection, so that if we have to do work together, it's not a kind of a cold email or that says, I need you to do this or that, right? And so if there's anything I would ask others to join me, kind of like a movement, is, what I am an advocate for technology and modernization and all that, there are certain fundamentals about who we are as people at a personal level or business level that we got to maintain. And it's building those connections and getting to know more about one another, so that when we do have to do business, it's based on a foundation of human relationships, and not just a name on an email or a little box in a Zoom call or an emoji or a forwarded happy holiday card.
Well, Driss, that's so meaningful coming from you, because despite being such an advocate for technology, the fundamentals remain the same, that we achieve things by the human connection, by getting people's buy-in, by operating better while we care for people. And those fundamentals just seem to be consistent no matter what we do.
Yeah, and maybe it's the immigrant in me. I think when you go through a lot of struggle and you can attribute your success to other people, uh, without them, you would not be where you are. You'll have to pay it forward. But to do that without those connections is very difficult. Having a real
Yes.
network of people, not just, again, social media profiles, but going deeper and creating those connections so that you eventually can help someone along the way or connect two people that without you would not have connected otherwise.
When I think, Driss, all the research academically shows that one of our biggest factors for happiness is the quality of our relationships. So I think it's well beyond. Certainly, immigrants had to do a bit of that because it was that early support system of supporting one another can be critical. But I think well beyond that, academically, we are happier when we have quality relationships.
Absolutely. And in our work environment, we talk about work-life balance and it has become a way of not only attracting talent, but retaining talent. But these are, I would say, fundamentals that go way beyond the modern life, if we want to call it that. And as we go deeper in this modern life and this digital economy and modernization, we got to hold on to those very important values.
Andres, I want to take a moment to talk a bit about futuristic, and I'll give some background for our audience. Um, I remember watching some videos that you had from the early 2000s talking a bit about where things were going to go about e-commerce and how we were going to do certain things today, and they were spot on. And I said, I need to go to the Oracle of Driss and find out a bit about where we're going to be 20 years from now. So if we were to have this discussion 20 years from now, what do you think would be different around us?
Well, look, um, this is something I've been researching, and I became very curious when I realized that anyone can create their own GPT, and so actually creating a GPT is as simple as having a natural language discussion with the UI, with the user interface. And the more I understand, now that we understand AI through this window that we were given in 2022, many of us were not in the academic world, that we're not teaching AI as professors or in research. So finally, we understand what it is. You know a lot more about AI than me, and many of us that had that opportunity to open up the world of AI and understand that your creativity starts to connect the dots, and you say, what can I use this for? And I'm not talking about work now. I'm just talking at the personal level. And I became fascinated about the human consciousness, basically our stories, our experience, our memories in our life that we accumulate. I mean, it's when you want to look back, now we have our pictures in our phone, but in the past it was the photo albums and the cards you got, and you sit during the holidays and you just go through them and you remember. It brings you back to all the stories and the memories. And you have the album where you had your parents' photos, your grandparents, and that's how you created a connective tissue of who you are, and where you came from. And eventually those stories stop. You can only go so far. And that point that stops is the last person within your family that documented, either left a picture or a letter or something you found in the archives. And I became fascinated about how we, in our living life, right, while we're still here, how we can digitize all of that, and how will that manifest to others, and and you can think of it as a personal project. You can think of it as your AI twin, your digital twin, that will be there forever as long as the grid is still on. But then you thought of it as well as not just your family, that how do you continue interacting in the industry? And so you could be actually giving talks, you could be contributing to progress, and you have been long gone. AI will allow us to do that. And I'm fascinated about this. And in a way, I had said to a friend of mine, 20 years ago when we started having cloud storage and security cameras. And I said, well, what if you recorded your entire life? What if you had this unlimited storage and you could leave your security cameras on at all time because of your choice, and you recorded everything, every day, every minute of the day. Now we have videos of our children's birthday parties, and we have photos, and that's how we remember. But what if I said, go back 20 years ago, Tuesday, 5 p.m., or 30 years ago, Sunday, 4 p.m., and it gave me an entire 15 minutes of what happened that day, 30 years ago. I don't have that today. I don't have that. And what would that be worth for me, for my family, so forth, so on. So again, it's an equivalent of that, but within AI now. Because it's not just a video from 30 years ago that showed you what happened that day, because you stored everything on the cloud. And that could have been a whole business model, by the way. Now you have an opportunity not only to talk about what happened and give those stories as your digital you, but you could actually create new thoughts based on who you were, how you thought, how you addressed issues, how you lived through challenges. So it could be about now. What would you do if you were here now in this situation? And you could say it. You could actually express that with intelligence. It's fascinating.
So you imagine a world 20 years from now where we could have Driss with his sidekick robot that can help, Driss with some of the tasks. You know how business leaders say all the time, I wish I could replicate myself so I could do certain things. It's now
Yeah.
you could have those robot sidekicks that are imitating your actions.
Maybe a better version of me. I mean, I tell you, I mean, you would want to have a better version of you. And I think code can do that. I think we humans have hard time sometimes admitting, evolving, self-correcting. I think code could do that better than us.
I think, Driss, if I got a digital twin of me and told my wife fix some of the things, then you definitely get a better version of me.
Or your kids.
Both.
Especially if you put guardrails around losing it or getting upset or sweating the small things, that could be guardrails within your GPT.
But I think the real takeaway is that we are going to get to a predictive level based on these data points that we have historically, where we can really augment workforces, increase productivity. I think from an economic perspective, you already mentioned it earlier, we only grow by either becoming more efficient at doing what we do or population growth. But certainly with where the world is going, it's going to be far more on the productivity side than strict population growth.
Innovation and brainstorming and whiteboarding needs time.
For sure.
If you look at your day, how much time is dedicated to answering emails? How much time is dedicated to administrative tasks? And if you were to let your AI twin with the proper guardrails, and we're now 5 years from now, 50 years of progress has gone by in 5 years. If you could augment yourself with intelligence to handle all of it and take all of the time now that was freed up to be on front of a whiteboard with a group of people, doing what human beings do best, create more tools, innovate more. Imagine where we will be as a society. And I think that is less talked about than the negative sides of AI. And we're going to talk about that as well, is how much capacity we can unlock for creativity, brainstorming, innovating, whiteboarding, connecting one with another. We don't have time today to do that too. I mean, it's technology is taking us away from connecting because we have to deal with all this email and potentially meetings that could be automated just with intelligence. So yes, it's going to be fascinating to see the upgrade of society as a result of AI.
Driss, it's truly, truly fascinating. I think it'll be an important takeaway of this podcast. I will move us to a portion of the podcast that I call the rapid fire questions. So for this one, it's whatever comes top of mind because it's meant to be fun, interactive, nothing that requires a lot of thinking.
And you didn't give me a heads up on this, and I didn't get the questions First,
This is
off guard.
that's it. That's it. We want you unprompted and and unprimed in a particular way. What is your favorite word?
Love,
What word do you hate?
distrust.
Distrust. I love it. What word do you have a hard time pronouncing, if any?
I say it now correctly. Interoperability. I used to have a hard time saying that.
I mean, that's a hard word for anybody.
Practiced a lot. I practiced a lot.
What is your favorite word in another language?
Baba,
Uh, how many languages do you speak?
6.
And what are they, Driss? Because now the audience will be curious.
We'll start with Moroccan. It's our dialect. We speak it in Morocco in multiple versions of it, but Moroccan is a language. Many people don't realize that. And of course, at school, from young age, we learn to speak classical Arabic, and so half of the day at school is done in classical Arabic, which we learned from childhood. And of course, the other half of the day at school, grow up speaking French. And so French is part of the language in Morocco, and we speak it in the administrative world. And being from the north of Morocco, being from Tangiers, by default, you speak Spanish because it was a Spanish protected part of the country. And so you'll find many people from the north of Morocco speaking Spanish. And as I always say, if you speak Spanish, you have a big chance to speak Portuguese. You got to learn some terms, but you can speak Portuguese. And so how far am I right now? I'm speaking English. so English I had to learn when I came to the U.S. I did not speak a word of English when I landed in the United States. I don't know what I was thinking. I picked any country in Europe, but I came here. I think it was because it was the farthest place from Morocco as I could be.
That's what we call baptism under fire. And Driss, the last rapid fire question before I deviated us on the language piece, but I just thought it would be curious for our audience. What is one word to describe yourself by?
Coach.
I think that's fair. and you mentioned it early on, so it all culminates with being the coach. Driss, I appreciate you joining me on the podcast today. It's been a true pleasure, and I think it will really resonate with our audience.
Gary, thank you very much. Look, you and I spent good quality time in the Board of Junior Achievement Americas. I admire what you do. I love your personality. I think this conversation, I know it's recorded, but we could be having it any time because this is how we talk when I see you in our board meetings. So a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for the invitation.
And for our audience, I met Driss through the Junior Achievement Americas board, but much like Driss just suggested, we've had many of these conversations one-on-one. And part of the reason that prompted the podcast, I said, some of these thoughts are amazing. Our audience needs to hear about it. And I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you, Gary.